Some people watch their dreams burn and others rise from the ashes. Welcome to Lessons from the Ashes, a Westeros Media podcast. I'm Stephanie Rose, your host and the one asking the real questions. Every week I sit down with fearless founders, industry disruptors, and trailblazers who walk through fire and come out unstoppable. We are not here for surface level success stories. This is about the raw, the real, and the lessons that turn setbacks into million-dollar moves. So if you're ready to stop dreaming and start doing, then you're in the right place. This is Lessons from the Ashes. Hello and welcome back to Lessons from the Ashes, a Westeros Media podcast. I'm really excited. We have a brand new guest who's never been on the show today. We have Melissa Franks, who is joining us from California, and I am really excited to hear your story. So welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yes, so I'm so excited to be here. I am based in Northern California, so wine country for anybody that needs a little geographical reference. And I have lived here most of my life. So live in the community, worked in the community. I'm a mom of three boys. So they are 15, 13, and 11. So a lot of testosterone in my life. And by trade in 2023, I started a fractional COO consulting business that primarily focuses on female entrepreneur owned and run businesses. And we help women get really successful and powerful and earn a lot of money and have thriving businesses.
That sounds amazing. Okay, so the first question I always ask people on the podcast is, tell us a little bit about your rising from the ashes moment. Like, was there a moment, is there a story where you really had to rise from the ashes, rebuild, and try again? Because that is the whole point of the podcast, is to give out these inspiring stories and give hope, especially when the world feels kind of crazy. So would you like to tell us your story?
I would. And I'm gonna take us back to 2023 and set the stage a little bit on where I was like going into the summer of 2023. So I had about, I don't know, 6 months prior had left a corporate career. I had spent 25 years inside of Fortune 100 companies, was the COO of a Fortune 500 company that we built from 50 million to 350 million in 3 years. So tons of success, big team. Left it all in 2022 and joined a founder who wanted me to run an incubator, and we were going to launch new businesses every 9 months. And like, this was the thing. This was going to get us wealthy. This was going to be able to like scratch the itch for me professionally and keep me curious and learning and all the things. And by late summer, he had run out of cash. He had stopped paying me, although I didn't realize it, and I'll get to that in a minute. And the business was absolutely failing. At the same time, I had been married for almost 15 years, and I was in an incredibly toxic and abusive marriage, and it had been that way the entire most 10 years, I would say, and nobody knew. My parents didn't know. My sister didn't know. None of my friends knew. Nobody knew. And in July 2023, he assaulted my 15-year-old child. He was arrested, and I had to flee with the kids. And so we went on a great vacation to Maui and came back, and our world was me as a single mom, us living under a restraining order. And 2 months later, I lost my startup job and had no income. He liquidated the companies, so I had no severance package, and all of these protections and like great fairy tale external life that I had literally came crashing down. Like it burned, and I had no choice. I needed to take care of three kids. I had legal bills that were about $15,000 a month, trying to keep us safe. And so I called a friend who had said maybe she needed some help, and she was my first fractional COO client. And from that moment on, it just became a put one foot in front of the other. And, you know, here we are now. I've got a thriving 6-figure business that's growing by leaps and bounds every single month. And we're not on the other side of the family court system, but we're in a much more stable and secure place now.
Wow, that is an incredible story. Okay, I have so many questions. So first of all, tell us about the startup that went sideways. You said you didn't realize he wasn't paying you. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So when I left corporate, I was able to negotiate an exit, a pretty good exit. I was bored. I wasn't the leader that they wanted us to be. So it was just a good, like, it's time to part ways. And so for the first time, because a part of the abuse in my divorce was financial abuse. So my ex was spending more than I earned constantly. I could not figure out why we were hemorrhaging money, but like on the outside, I was a C-suite executive. We should have been like living the high life, and we were not. Like that most of the time it was, do I pay the mortgage or do I pay the electrical bill? Like that was kind of what was happening behind the scenes. So this big payout from the corporate world was fantastic. Like for the first time, like there was security and all of these things. So I wasn't counting pennies the way that I had had to before. And so he stopped paying me. It was all rapid fire succession. So the domestic violence happened on July 26th. I didn't get the first paycheck he defaulted on was August 1st. So clearly I was not paying attention to anything that was happening financially at that point. And then he continued to default. And it really took me until mid-September before I was like, okay, what's happening? Like I'm back, my kids are in school, I've got my footing under me, like what's actually going on? And he just wasn't honest about it. There was lots of markers in the business that things were not going well. He wasn't paying people, and there were things that were misaligned to how I do business, just from a code of conduct perspective. So there were signs. So I already knew that I needed to make a move. Like this just wasn't gonna be what we wanted. But that stark moment where I looked at the bank account and realized there had been no deposits for like 5 pay periods, almost 6, was frightening because he wasn't a big corporation. He was just a human, right? And so what do I do? Get an expensive lawyer and like hope for the best? And it was a really challenging situation amongst all of the other stress I was dealing with.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about building your business, because I think that so many entrepreneurs, they think that as soon as the timing is right, they're going to start their entrepreneur journey. And it's like there's 2 camps. They're like, when the timing's right, I'm going to do it. And then the other camp is every entrepreneur who literally has started a business and the timing has never been right. And it sounds to me like you were like up against a wall. So talk me through you deciding to start a business versus like going back and finding, you probably could have found another CEO job, no problem, like in that big point of turmoil. So tell me about that.
It was really interesting. So, I was emotionally exhausted. The best way that I can describe it is it was taking everything that I had intellectually and emotionally. So there's a lot of strategy involved with navigating the family court system, a lot. And it's why people get screwed, because they don't think strategically. So my career like conditioned and trained me for that, but I was exhausted. And I had made a fatal flaw when I was in corporate, and I put no energy or effort into my network, like none. I was a big fish, right, inside of the little corporate pond that I was in, although it was a pretty big corporate pond. But externally, no, like nobody knew who I was. And I had been there for 15 years. So when I needed to like look outside of myself and start phoning a friend for like, heard of a job, who could I talk to, whatever, there just was nothing there, because I had never actually put any attention or effort, even though I knew I should have. And so at the very beginning, that wasn't an option. I called everybody that I knew. I mean, I got on phones, I was doing virtual coffees, I was, big borrowing and stealing to get connections and all the things. But at the C-suite level, the world moves very slow and all of the jobs are hidden. So it's all about who you know, who can connect you. And what I had decided to do was, it's going to take me 18 months to find a job. So I'm just going to try to figure out how to earn money in the meantime. So instead of me going to Starbucks, I like called somebody and said, hey, do you need some consulting work? Right. It was a little bit of the trade-off. And so I would say when I started the business in November of 2023, to me, initially, it was temporary. It was until I get the gap bridged. And the reason for that was I had 3 failed businesses behind me. I had tried to do the entrepreneurial thing before and had like burned, like crashed and burned, total failure. And so in my head, the narrative was you're just not cut out to run your business, you're cut out to run other people's businesses. And unfortunately, there were no corporate jobs. Even if I went down levels and did trade-offs, I either needed to travel a ton, which I couldn't do, or I needed to move, which I couldn't do, or they just shriveled up. Like we talked for 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden the job would die. And so by March of 2024, this was it. And this was a make it or break it. And unfortunately, that first person I had started working with didn't need me anymore. So when I looked at March 1st in 2024, I had no clients, I had no leads, I had no prospects, and I didn't have any jobs waiting. So this was a situation where there may not be a good time to start a business, but that's our only thing that we can do here. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm not a person that lays down and dies. So like we've got to figure it out and keep going. And it was a really rough from November of 2023 until about June of 2024. It was frightening and rough and living on like dwindling savings and all of the things. It was really not pretty, but we got to the other side of it.
That's amazing. So, okay, I want to talk more about like so many people are like the thing that catches them up with their entrepreneurial journey is like the ups and downs of life and like emotions and feelings and hormones and all of the things that like throw you off, but you have to like get back and like be your own cheerleader so hard when you're an entrepreneur. It just like is like the main thing that people come up against, and like convincing themselves that they can convince other people they're worth working with. So when you were like up against the wall, and even now to this day, like what kind of tactics do you use? What do you do to keep yourself like, okay, yeah, I can keep doing this. I can keep being an entrepreneur for another day.
So there's a few things that I have learned over the course of a long time to kind of propel me to keep going. I worked in an environment in a corporate perspective where it was just me. There were no other women. There were no other women my age. There were no other women that were married and had kids. And most definitely were not like breaking the ceilings I was. So I was constantly for decades having to build some emotional resilience and tactics to keep myself going because it was very challenging to achieve the success that I had in the environment that I was in. And so when I came into the entrepreneurial space, I really had to ground myself in the fact that I was building a business based on my expertise. Nobody could take it away from me. What I know and what I'm good at and the results that I've had, nobody can take that from me. So I needed to really just focus around here's how I can improve things. And then as I started to help businesses or advise people pro bono or like whatever I was doing, and I did this in corporate, like when I needed to do performance reviews for myself, and I've done it all the way to this day, is I keep this little folder of wins, and they might be really small, they might be really big, but it's like here's every single success that happened. It's a little bit of a spin on a gratitude journal, right? Where like I have this folder and it's like here's all of the good that's happened. And then anytime I'm feeling frustrated or a contract ends and I'm not sure how I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do next or any, because those early days were tough. I would just go back in there and I'd be like, this is the good. This is the good. This is how you're changing things. This is how things are shifting. This is how things are building. And by reinforcing that with actual facts and data, even if they're small, it helps pull the emotion out of the whole thing. Because like you can't argue with this. This actually happened. So if it happened once, it can happen again. Keep going.
I love that. That's really, really great. So who do you work with now? Like what kind of businesses are you working with? Like who are you helping? What's your network like now?
It's really fascinating. So I was not building the business on referrals. Like it was not happening. I knew that it wasn't. It was keeping me like alive, but barely. And so um in the fourth quarter of 2024, I started running paid advertising and I was super nervous and like, am I just throwing money in the wind and like what is happening? And what has ended up coming from that is this amazing portfolio of businesses that I'm working with that span almost every industry. So I work with online business owners that do education and coaching and training. I work with people in the education sector. So, one client advises charter school boards, and that's what she does. And another client supports diagnosis children with learning challenges and then has a tutoring center for them. I work with a local med spa that I go into a couple of days a week. I work with an e-commerce shop that's owned by a very influential personality in the space that they do business in. So the amazing thing is that my world has opened up. It's completely cracked open. And for me, that's a gift because what I do is the same regardless of what you sell, who you serve. Like it's all the same. Business is the same at the end of the day. It's the great equalizer. You still need to do a certain set of things. And so I have now hit every single industry. I just spoke with somebody in healthcare yesterday, and it's just really great because there's a variety of businesses I can help. And generally, I'm in my best era if you've got 3 million or more in revenue. But I have a good amount of clients where they get to phone a friend once a week and be like, here's what's going on. What do I do? And we figure it out and they go off on their way until the next crisis. And so I'm getting to really help people that maybe don't really need a fractional COO for any reason. They just need business acumen and good advice. And it's been a gift to be able to touch so many people and so many different types of business.
I love that. So can you define what a fractional COO is, and at what point in my business would I be like, need one? Like if I'm like struggling with these things, how will I be like, this is the thing that's going to help me?
So a fractional COO was really just a part-time chief operations officer. That's all that it is. It's somebody that works less than 40 hours a week inside of your business. But that's not all. The COO position is the most confusing, confounding position that exists in corporate. Like it just is. It's like a title that's been there forever, but nobody knows what it is. And primarily because what that job really is the co-CEO. So wherever the CEO or owner or founder is really, really strong, the COO brings a complementary set of skills that makes everything whole from a business perspective. And so a COO that is a seasoned, credentialed, been there, done that COO is a bit of a chameleon. And I like to say that I will support and help you and I have excellence in everything except for finance and legal. If we get ourselves into a spot, like we need to call the lawyer or we need to call the CPA. I am not those things, but I know enough to be able to get us through. And so businesses need support at a variety of levels. So anybody that has a business, they know what they're selling, they're making money, they're making a profit, they're expanding their team, they're steadily growing, or they were, and they've backslid, and they're making 7 figures plus is a business that is a candidate for a fractional COO. Now, how much you need of somebody really depends on the complexity of your business, how fast you're growing. There's some key components. Anything below that, if you're still playing around, I'm not sure if these are the products I'm going to sell. I'm not sure if this is the industry that I'm in. I keep messing around with my services and offers. What you need is a business strategist. And On-Call COO, my business is unique in that we do both business strategy and fractional COO placement. And so depending on what you need, you may just need 4 hours with somebody to sit you down and tell you to stop doing 17 things and do one thing. I think I had that conversation 5 or 6 times in January. I get that you have a ton of ideas. Business owners are adrenaline junkies. Like they live on the high of messing with stuff. They just love it. Like as soon as the business is boring, it's a good thing. And the business owner gets annoyed and starts tinkering. And so below 7 figures, really what you need is support from a business strategist that can be a fractional CO or not. But there's somebody that really understands how businesses work, how they scale and grow, what you need based on where you're at and what you're going to need to think about as you are moving forward.
Okay, I love that. This also huge topic that people come to me with. They are like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm like, well, what are we landing on? And they're like, do I have to? I'm like, well, depends what you want at the end of the day. If you want a successful business, then we do have to pick something. If you want to just do whatever, then like do that, but don't expect the same thing. So I want to talk about this more. This is the point that I'm gonna get you to pick your brain on. Okay, so if somebody comes to you and they're like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm super passionate, like have all of this inside that I'm gonna like really like go for, but I have 20 ideas. How do you make them pick something, and how do you make them stay with that?
So where we always start, whether you're an idea factory or you've been in business for 10 years, when we start working together, we always start in the exact same place. What does your ideal life look like? How do you spend your days? What are you doing? How much are you working in the business? And we usually pick a number that they can't imagine. So if you have a $100 million business, if you have a $20 million business, like whatever, what does your life look like? Where are you living? Who are you spending your time with? Like we really get into that, like, because that's the actual goal, is what your life is. And then in order to get there, what does the business need to look like? And it starts to provide this point of tension as we go through the list of ideas, because we start to talk about what the trade-offs are. So that visionary of life, if we're going to do 17 things at once, you're never going to get there. And we start working through that. So that's where we always start, is let's align on what that is, because then we can go back to that for the next 5 years. Are we working towards that? Like, did that choice you just made get you there? I had one small business owner that I worked with that she and her husband actually said this to me, and her mother. They were like, she needs to be more present with the kids and the family. She needs to work less. We need to whatever. And she keeps wanting to add things and offer more things. And every time she does, I say, so is that going to get you home at 3:00 in the afternoon? Is that going to get you off your phone Saturday and Sunday? And as soon as the answer is no, it dies, because that vision is so clear of what that life looks like. Now, people that have, depending on where they're at, usually they start to see a little bit of success, and then they decide they want to add one more thing and add one more thing. And then if I get quoted one more time that the most wealthy people have 7 streams of income, I might start to pull my hair out, because it's just, there's a lot of fake news associated as far as that's concerned. So what I advise when people have a ton of ideas is we pick one. So where do you have the most expertise? Where have you actually done it before? Like, let's ground ourselves in things where you are authentically credible, standing on your own 2 feet before you do anything, that you can sell that good, you can sell that service, you can do whatever. And that's where we start. Because it becomes incredibly difficult to persuade an audience, a cold market of buyers, like whomever it might be, that you've built a better mousetrap or you're the better service provider if you've never actually done it. Before you have social proof, you have credentials. And so with everybody that has like this laundry list of ideas, I'm like, we can pivot and we can extend and we can do all those things once we are sure the thing can run on its own. But until then, the first thing you start with is the thing that nobody can argue with. You could go into a court of law and you could testify on the stand that you have done the thing and you have done it with excellence and you have delivered the results. Like, your product, it is the better mousetrap. You know, your house has been mouse free for decades, you know, whatever it might be. And then once we have that running, and you can hand it off to one person, 5 people, 10 people with integrity, and it's continuing to earn the same amount of money that it was in, it's as profitable as it was, and you can focus all of your attention on number 2, until we get there, there is no number 2.
Oh my God, I love this. That's exactly, when you said the 7 streams of income thing. Yes, because the core of what I do is help people like really solidify their brand, and like how it looks, how it feels, how people interact with it, like the client experience. And the exact same thing always comes up. You can't be 25 things. They're like, well, I want to work with these people, and I want to work with beginners, and I want to work with people who have money. And I'm like, you can't talk to both beginners and people who have a 7-figure business, because they are completely different people. So I love when you're talking about this. When people are coming to you and you're like sorting through this, do you find that they have trouble staying? Like, you're like, for the next 5 years, we're going to focus on this goal. do people like realistically, once you've given them the direction, can they like kind of run with it for the next 5 years, or do they keep coming back and that's why they keep coming to you?
It really depends on the human. And this is, and it's because I have this theory that there are three types of business owners, and you can change how you're categorized, and most do. But there is the founder, or like the chief product officer. They're like the head of innovation. Keep having ideas, keep creating stuff, like just want to play. Like that's just what you want to do. Sometimes they want to just deal with the clients or the products, but they're like constantly tinkering. There's that persona. There's the CEO persona, which is I'm the administrator of the business. I make all of the decisions. Everybody reports to me. Like I make sure that all of the systems, like everything is a well-oiled machine. And then there's what I refer to as the business owner, or the board member, and they don't want to be in the business anymore, and they've run out of ideas, but they want the cash and the asset and all the things. And so depending on, and you will go in and out of all three of those roles, but generally speaking, business owners fall into three of those camps. So somebody that is constantly innovating, the priorities for that business are, we need to generate so much profit that you can fully replace yourself in these areas so you have free time to do those things, and like literally build them as many startups and do all of the things. That conversation is really, really different from somebody that's like, this is our lane and we're really good here. And then they start to have challenges that are different. We've hit a revenue plateau, or we've actually had a revenue decline, or we're having issues with customer experience, like they depending on the stage of the business. And so often in those first two camps of the people that they want to just be the chief innovator and don't want to worry about standard operating procedures because they're not sexy or fun. I will work with those businesses for a long time, kind of on a retainer basis, because they need somebody that's actually the adult in the room and making decisions and making sure the shop runs and all the things. The other two roles, usually we work for a shorter period of time because all we're trying to do is find them the right team and the right people and like resolve a near and present issue. And then as soon as they have another one, then we kind of bounce in and bounce out. So it really depends. But fractional COO support can unlock brain capacity for any business owner to allow them to creatively solve problems that they feel overwhelmed by. So some business owners are absolutely capable of solving an inconsistency with the client experience, but they can't even think about it because they're spending so much time with staff management. So you bring in a fractional COO that just starts managing your staff, and then all of a sudden they can drill in and like get ninja with how they want the client experience to be, and they want to change a portal, or they want to change the packaging, or they want to do whatever. And so a lot of times in small business, the gift of a fractional COO is taking all that stuff off your plate you don't want to do and you're not good at, to give you more room and freedom to be able to do those things.
Oh, that's so interesting, because I think a lot of what gets people is they just get so overwhelmed. There's too many things, and then they can't focus on what they're good at, and then the whole thing goes belly up. So at what point do you tell somebody that they don't have a viable business and they should throw in the towel?
So when they're operating at a loss, the very first, so it's interesting. 50% of all of the businesses that I'm actively working with are in the middle of creating budgets for the first time ever. Some of these businesses have been around for 20 years and they've never had a budget. And it's happening because they've been living and dying by this. There's enough money in the bank to pay the bills, like we're all fine. And then as soon as there's not enough money in the bank to pay the bills, it's like the sky is falling. And so a business can't be revived when you're constantly running at a loss, and either the loss is not recoverable. So some startups are a great example of this. All of a sudden you're $5 million or $10 million in the hole. You're just not going to get out of it. You've never made a dollar. Nobody's bought your thing. Like it's time to go. In non-startup land, it's usually death by 1,000 paper cuts. And so what we start to look at is why are we hemorrhaging money? What can we cut back? Are you still bringing revenue in? And we will experiment and try things, but I make everything time bound. If you're going to implement a change in your business, you get 12 weeks, sink or swim. Implement the change and then see what happens. Don't touch it. And if we go through a few cycles of that in the business and nothing is working, then it's really time to think about, is this something that you want to continue to pursue? Like, is this worthwhile? I will say, I haven't worked with anybody aside from the startup sort of situation. Aside from the tech startup space, we've always been able to right the ship. I can give you an example. So there was a business owner that I started talking with about a year ago, and she was really stressed because she'd had $1 million business in 2023, and then in 2024, like everything just like caved, and she couldn't figure out why. And so she got coaches. She spent a lot of money, right? Coaches, started running ads, like doing all the things. And no matter what she did, everything kept declining. She kept steadily seeing revenue go down. And I was physically with her in December of 2024. And we were talking about this, and, she was going to end the year significantly below 2023. And should I keep doing this? Should I throw in the towel? Are we belly up? And so I asked her, what did you do in 2023 that worked? And it took a while, but we got the list together. And I said, how much of that are you doing now? She was doing none of it in 2024. None. And I said, here's my challenge to you, because you still have good social media engagement, like there's all these markers saying that things are alive and well. My challenge to you is return, like go home tomorrow, and for the next 12 weeks, do exactly what you did in 2023. I saw her in January of 2024. So like a month later, maybe 5 weeks, completely turned her business around. She had the biggest January that she had had since 2022, purely because she was too close and she didn't realize that she had something she didn't have to fix. So I think sometimes it appears that the business is failing. Sometimes it appears that you have to, push all your chips in and, just cash out at the table. And it's just that you're too close. You're missing one tiny detail. And as soon as somebody can come in and see it and gets you back on the right course, exponential growth happens in the business. And I have countless stories like that, where it's like 10 minutes of looking at something. I know exactly what you need to fix. Go fix it. Don't touch anything else. Amazing results.
Okay. So when you are like doing this process of digging in and finding like the thing, because I think everyone is obsessed with finding the one thing that's going to change everything. So what kind of things are those, like really specifically? Like, was it her social media? Was it what she was offering? Like, what was the thing she had to go back to?
So for her specifically, in that instance, it was her sales process. So what she had done in 2023 was got people on the phone. She scheduled, consultation calls for free, and then was able to have the sales conversation. She was able to do exactly kind of what we were just talking about for business, but for humans, and convert them. What she was trying to do was remove herself from the process, because it took energy and it was tiring. And that's a lot of calls if you're going to make $1 million, right? Like she was worried it wasn't going to scale. So instead of taking the process that was working and scaling with humans, which is what I would have recommended her to do. You don't want to be on the phone all the time? Then find somebody else and train them and monitor their calls and like get them slowly to be on the calls instead of you. So instead of taking 20 calls a month, you take 10, right? And let's quality control. Let's train somebody to be you. That's what I would have recommended for her. Instead, what she said is, I'm just going to implement ManyChat and do a bunch of lead gen and send a bunch of emails, and like, they're all going to come because they're here. And that wasn't the case, because what she was selling required a conversation. It just was what it was. And so often when we think, nobody starts a business to run a business, nobody. They start a business because they have a great idea. They're really great at something. They want to improve something. They want to do whatever. So what that means is, most of the time, the business acumen that I've developed over 25 years of growing and scaling all sorts of businesses, selling things, like advising startups and VCs and all of that stuff, the average small business owner doesn't have, because their business is the thing that they know best, which is not business. And so you will, in this example, she in her head said, I need to scale and I can't scale myself, so then I will scale with technology. And what was missing was the key to conversion in this case was human connection. And you can't scale that with technology. You can scale it with other humans, but not ManyChat.
No, I think that's a huge thing because people are like, they see the Instagram influencer who's like, I'm running my business from the beach, and they think all I need to do is implement AI and just let it fly. And then they wonder why they are losing the connection with people.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That is like, I think a lot of people need to rewind and listen to that part again because if I could send this to a lot of people, I will be sending this to some people. Okay. So let's talk about when you've decided that, okay, this is the one thing I have to do, and I have to do it for 12 weeks. How do people like talk me through that part? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest things for people is like, okay, so this is something that I know we need to change. We need to scale it back. We need to go back to the, whatever, the calls, the one thing that like kept us going for 12 weeks. How do you actually like, do you structure for them what they're going to do? Do you just tell them they have to be accountable? Like, how do you get them to stick to that?
We build a 12-week plan. So, and this is not my idea. I can't remember the author, but there's a book out there that's called The 12-Week Year. And he's got this, like, there's a workbook, there's all this stuff. Like you could ninja yourself to death. I've taken it and I've messed with it a little bit because unless you're very type A, you do not have. And I am very type A and I couldn't stick with it. So I have adjusted it for the average human, let's say. But what we do is we create a plan for 12 weeks. And I come from a software development background. That was a good part of my career. And so I think in that frame of mind. And so what that means is that a third of the time, you're building, designing, figuring it out. A third of the time you're implementing, and a third of the time you're doing what I refer to as monitor and control, where you don't touch the thing. So depending on what it is, if you have already done it before and you just need to roll it back, then as quickly as possible, you get it implemented so that you can spend as much time with it just running and you can collect and manage data. So when we build a plan, the very first thing that I say if we're going to change anything is like, how are we going to measure the outcome? How are we going to know it worked? How are we going to know that it failed? And if the answer is we can't, then we need to go change something else, because everything in business should be tied to some sort of a measurable metric. And you can really, there's thousands of business metrics. So we figure out what we want to adjust, why we want to adjust it, what the goal is, and then how we're going to measure. And then as soon as we implement, we start tracking data. Data does not lie to you. Data also does not allow for drama. You cannot create an alternate universe. You can't create your own construct. Like, you cannot argue with data. It just is what it is, the end. And so we then track data for the remainder of the 12-week period. And at the end, we say, okay, so if we did all of the things you're supposed to with integrity, right? And that's a little bit of the check on a weekly basis. And these are the results that we had. Is it good enough to keep going? Or do we need to find something else? Like, this moved the needle a little bit, but not enough. Okay, so then what's the next thing that we do? And how you pick the thing, if you have been in business for a while, is you look back at the last year, the last 18 months, the last really successful period, whatever it is, and you define by month what exactly was happening. So I made $50,000 in the month of June. Why? What was going on? Oh, you spoke at a big conference and you had 1,000 leads show up out of nowhere. And, like, you start to build that context around the result you're trying to replicate. And then you ask yourself, can I do it again? So if you had a $50,000 month because you happen to have a speaking engagement that drove a bunch of new business your way, unless you can pull that same speaking engagement out of thin air, you can't replicate it. So what can we do instead? And that's really how you start to, at the very basis, you find the things you can replicate where you had success, and then you do it again and measure and then see if it moves the needle enough.
Okay, so what about the businesses who are like, they're convinced they've got a good idea, like they're convinced this is the right thing for them to do, but they haven't seen that big success and they haven't had that like thing they can go back to. How would you help them like kind of future cast into like what can be our big thing?
So, I really subscribed to the try it and see, but in a finite period with the ability to stop it at any point based on some guardrails. So if a business is brand new, then everything is an experiment. So you just decide what you're going to experiment with, what the control period is going to be, and then how you're going to evaluate if it was successful or not, and then what you're going to do next. And so new businesses, there is a lot of like 6 week or even 12-week periods of time where it's like, this is the thing we're selling. This is how much we're selling it at. This is the way we're selling it. And then if it doesn't do the result, then we pivot real hard. And you'll see that in tech startups, you'll see that in some other spaces, but you have to have a control period because confused people don't buy, whether you're selling a mousetrap or you're selling a service. And so if you're changing your pricing every week, if you're changing the name of your offer every week, if you're changing, like 1 week we're selling pet products and the next week we're selling skincare, like they're going to keep scrolling or wherever they're not going to be able to figure out what you do. So if you've been in business and you're just not getting the results that you want. So you've got some clients, you've got some sales, products moving, but not quite where you want it to be. Then you decide from a big lane perspective, what are we going to focus on? Do we need to really hone in on expenses and cut costs so we can increase our profit margin? Do we really need to focus on conversion? So is it that we're getting people in, they're just not getting like the close, whatever that is? Okay, so then that's where we focus. Is it that nobody's coming in the front door, proverbial front door? Okay, well then we need to work on marketing. And so we figure out a very big lane, and then we identify no more than 3 actions that we'll take in that control period to start moving the needle. So we do a little diagnosis of like the front end problem and then start working on it.
How many years would you say like is a new business in your mind? Is that like 3 years in, 10 years in? Like what's a new business to you?
I think it's difficult to manage it time frame wise. It's easier to look at it based on stage of business.
Okay.
So at the place where you can month over month, quarter over quarter, you figure out your period, you're able to pay all of your expenses with revenue from the business. You're able to pay yourself, you're able to pay whomever else is there, and you are seeing steady growth. And that could be like 1 new client a quarter. That could be selling 5 more widgets instead of 4, right? It doesn't need to be gangbusters, but as soon as you're able to have a steady Eddie business that's paying its bills, it's continuing to incrementally grow, you're not a new business anymore because you have something that people want. You've been able to demonstrate over and over and over and over again that you can sell it. It's definitely profitable enough to pay you and pay your expenses and all the things. And so now it's time to figure out how do you want to scale that? Where do you want to pour gas on the fire? And what is going to break when you do? Because it's a question a lot of people don't ask. All of a sudden they're like, this thing is working and now I want to spend a bunch of money on ad dollars. And go ahead, start getting a ton of people in the door. But if you're a services-based business and you need humans to deliver the services, and all of a sudden 200 people come running in your door, what's going to happen? You can't fulfill, right? Or you can't fulfill at the same level of quality, or you're going to have some wait list thing that's not going to work for you. And so we do a little bit of once you're out of that trial and error period, and you know who you are, what you're selling, who you're selling it to, all the things, then it's where are we going to pour the gasoline on, and are we ready when the fire starts?
Okay. So when people decide like, okay, this is the moment, I'm going to start to scale, how do you help them future cash what's going to be the thing that blows up?
So we, one of the things that we do is we look across all of the business processes, and the question that I ask is, when does it break? So when does this thing break? When does it not make, when can it not happen? Whether it's a supply chain issue or it's a human capital issue or whatever. And so based on that and all of the answers to the questions and the dynamics of the business, we create a staffing plan that says, when you hit this milestone, these are the next roles that you need, so that they know how to add team and how they can recover the cost in the business. The other thing that we do, if it's a business that wants to have multiple business segments or multiple product offerings, or wants to serve like I refer to them as divisions, but if you want to serve different client bases, but you're starting with one, then what we do is we set milestones around those being their own kind of little business units that can operate independently of themselves. They still need the business owner to run and manage it, but like who's in charge day to day? So if you're serving, I don't know, let's say that you're a business and you're helping future high school students get into college. And initially, you're working with the parents on like the process and the mechanics and the applications and like all of the things. And now you want to expand into coaching the kids, like how to write an essay, how to interview, how to like write, how to make decisions for your classes and grades and like all, right? And so you now want to start serving another group. What you need to make sure is that the business that supports the parents day to day, it doesn't need you, because all of your attention and energy is going to need to go into this baby thing now that you're kind of creating and building and experimenting with. And so when we decide and we lay out the plan of do this, and when you meet this milestone, then you can add this on. And when you meet this milestone, then you can add this on. It's always understanding where processes are going to break when it scales and how we're going to solve for that, which is a staffing plan, usually is how that comes about, or technology introduction. And then ensuring that that thing can stand on its own and mostly run by itself day to day so that you can go focus on building the next thing, because you can't build two things at once.
Oh, okay. I love this conversation. So many good gold nuggets. So if you could give some advice to either younger entrepreneurs or people who are like in an earlier stage than you, and they're like starting out, they're like, I have this great idea. I'm going to be a business owner. Like, this is the thing. What would you tell to them?
So the first thing that I would say is you need to be patient. And as somebody who hates being told to be patient, this was a really rough pill to swallow, but nothing happens overnight. We're so inundated with success stories that don't tell all of the story. There are even very big business influencers out there today that drive me a little bit crazy because they're like just leaving the plot line out of things about their educational background, their prior professional background, you know, like there's story there. So be patient. The second thing that I always advise if you want to start a business is it should be something that you are already either excellent at doing, you have credentials to provide, like you are already the authority, even if it's in like your small, teeny tiny community or network that you have to do this thing, to offer this product, to provide these services, etc. And the reason for that is it's incredibly difficult to start a business where you have a really great idea, but you haven't actually like solved the problem and are known for solving the problem. And this is where people get really sideways. It's one of the reasons that anybody that tries network marketing most of the time fails, because it's just not like they're trying to sell skincare solutions to somebody and they've never had the skincare problem, so they don't like know how to talk about it and can't align. So when you're starting a business, the first thing that you do, the first thing that you start, and then you can do all sorts of other things, but you've got to build credibility and credential. And the only way to do that is around your expertise and actually showing that I've done the thing, I know how to do the thing. This is what I do. And then the last thing that I recommend is do not hire a single person. And this is something that people can really get caught up in. I do not think initially you need a mindset coach, you need a life coach, you need a business coach, you need a social media manager, you need a VA. Like when you are starting a business, the only way you're going to figure out how it is viable is by doing everything yourself. Everything. Now, I'm not saying don't get business advice and don't, leverage your resources and do all of the things, but if you start to bring voices in and pay people to advise you when you haven't figured it out yourself, all you get is really distracted. When I started this business that I have now, in a panic, I was like, well, these women have coached me before in the past in the small business space, for all of those failed small businesses, by the way, not their fault, my fault, but so they know what they're doing. So I'm going to go partner with them. And what ended up happening was it was 6 months of frustration on my part because I was doing a whole bunch of things that made no sense for my business. But I trusted them and I knew better. this is what I do for a living. I knew better, but I trusted them. So they became the voice of reason. And after about 6 months, I was like, well, this is ridiculous. It's not yielding the results that I want. And I had to sit down with myself and say, so what should I actually be doing? And as soon as I did, it unlocked growth like that. So you can't, you're just going to have to roll up your sleeves and get it done. So don't hire a team, don't hire any experts, just figure it out yourself. When you start making money, then figure out who you need, what, how you want it to go.
I love that. I think that there is a humongous problem in the entrepreneurial world where people, they think, oh, I'm just going to hire some fancy coach who says they make $1 million, and they haven't actually been able to replicate their success to their clients. And huge red flag. I see it all the time. All the time. Over and over again. And it drives me nuts. I wish that there was checks and balances for the online coaching world so that they could be called out as to not actually having the expertise that they say they have.
Ditto. I'm with you on that all day long.
It's frightening. Okay, so if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my God, I have made all of these mistakes, where would you say, like, what's the next best step? Like, what's the one thing that you need to do next to like get back on the right track?
Yeah, so I think for everybody always, I'm going to recommend that you understand your business financials. And this is not complicated. Like, you do not need to live in QuickBooks for the rest of your life, but you need to understand what you're spending money on and where your money is coming in from. You just at a basic level, because it gives you a really high business IQ when you can start to make informed decisions about how you're using your money. So I recommend to everybody that they understand that if they have a bookkeeper, they work with their bookkeeper to build their profit and loss statement so it makes sense to them. It doesn't need to make sense to the bookkeeper. It needs to make sense to you because you're the business owner and you need to understand it in the way that you do. So if that means that you need to have 17 revenue streams because you're making money 17 different ways and you need to name them all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until you know what they are, get it done. But you need to understand that's the very beginning, because you'll never have the profitability that you want if you're not looking at it. And it's such a buzzkill. Everybody hates when I say that, but that's really the first place that you start. And then the other thing that I would recommend is to get yourself into spaces where there are other entrepreneurs. And the reason that I recommend that is because you're going to start to find your board of advisors, which is other entrepreneurs that are at the same place as you or a little bit farther ahead or have had different experience. And so when you have a marketing question, you can call your board of advisors. You don't need to go hire a marketing coach. When something happens and you have somebody really unhappy with you and you want to make it right, but you're not sure what to do and you don't want to pay a consultant $500 an hour to tell you what to do, like, you can call your board of advisors and figure it out. And so I think as much as like diving into your business and understanding the financials and the data and the metrics and like what's really happening, it's also really important to have a sounding board of people that are in the same season and lane as you. It is not the same as asking your mom. It's not the same as asking your best friend who like works at some corporation somewhere. It's not the same as asking your partner, who has a day job and they're like, I support you and I love you, but I have no idea what you're talking about, right? Like, you need people that are in the trenches with you. And a lot of times when I speak with business owners, they're on an island by themselves. I think nobody understands them. And as soon as you can start to connect them with people, they start to unlock solutions for each other that they have to pay $1 for,
So how do you suggest getting that network? Like, do you create people online? Do you go to networking events? Like, how do you personally do that?
So I have been I hired those coaches that ended up sticking me in a container. So that was an interesting situation because I was surrounded by it. But what I have found is that when used correctly, social media is an incredibly powerful tool. And so people are authentically looking for human connection because they've just lost it. They're doing, everything's through a screen. Nobody's in the same places as them. So what I recommend regardless of you're an interior designer, you own a brick and mortar, you do everything online, whatever it is, in your community, there is Facebook groups of local entrepreneurs and small business owners. They actually have events where you physically meet in person. Get in there. May not be your jam, but go find it. Join the Chamber of Commerce, like do some of that local things. But then on social media, go find the entrepreneurs out there and send them a DM and like, hey, your content's so helpful to me, or like, I'd love to learn more about your business. You can create these kind of authentic relationships. It sounds crazy, but you can, just by celebrating somebody else and like asking for advice or offering a favor. I mean, I did both. And so now I have a really healthy, group of entrepreneurs that I have started to be able to bounce ideas off of and lean on and all those things, because I went to a couple of conferences, and then I leaned into my local community, and then I just leveraged the strength of Instagram to crowdsource people I could trust.
I love that. That's great advice. And I think that people sleep on that too often. They think that social media is just to promote themselves, and they do not realize that your network is so important. And some of the greatest assets I have in my business are people I've met online. Yeah. So I totally agree with that. Okay, so last question, because we're running out of time, but I really want to know, how do you, because you work with women, what do you say to them when they come to you and they're like, the world is on fire, like the political climate is crazy, what do we do? How do you help them regulate themselves so they can like keep making the change they need to in the world?
The world is always going to be on fire. It just is. In 2016, it was that we didn't have a woman elected president in the United States. In 2020, it was that we had a global pandemic. Now, Handmaid's Tale is coming to life, like in a live action sort of situation, depending on your political leanings. So I think that it's a fallacy for us to say that things are just bad right now, because there's always going to be volatility. We're just not going to be able to predict what it was. Nobody predicted the war in Ukraine. Like the world is changing and evolving too fast. And so what I recommend is to stay informed, but to cut out the noise kind of simultaneously. So understand where the global economy, understand where the world at large would potentially impact your business. Do you need to pay attention because eggs are $15 a dozen and you're primarily targeting to women who have children and families, and so they're going to be cash strapped, so you probably need to pay attention to inflation and those sorts of things. But mostly what I advise is like pick the things that you're worried about and then just do you. Unless you want to be heavily political, you don't need to use your business to have a political platform. There's a lot of pressure, I think, sometimes that women specifically feel around, am I going to get backlash if I don't talk about this? Or am I going to get backlash about that? Your business is your business, and what you do in your personal life, you do in your personal life. But like, we have to get to a place where we're able to pick and choose the inputs and what we do with that information. I think that the world is a scary place. So I don't want to, as somebody that is not currently divorced and hopefully doesn't need a no-fault divorce, but could need one, and it's something that they were trying to take away, and has literally, as recently as last week, had conversations around, should I add my kids to the ownership structure of the business because they're boys and one of them is going to be 18 in 2 years and he can own the business if I can't. Those are real concerns that I'm having. I think that all you can do is be smart and have awareness, but not get distracted by it. Because today it's, one thing, and tomorrow it's going to be something entirely different.
I think that's really great advice. It can feel really overwhelming, but like, what can we tackle today? What can we focus on? I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much. So if people want to learn more about you, like dig into the things you are doing, where can they find you? How can they reach you?
So there's probably 3 places that they can come find me. So come find me on Instagram. I'll talk to you all day. Send me a DM, like comment and whatever. There you'll see kind of a combination of business plus my kids, and kind of the craziness that goes on in being a single mom of 3 boys. It is wild. And so my handle is at Melissa_Franks there. I have a podcast, which is called the Opt-in Podcast. So if you want to hear businessy related things and tips and tricks, that's a great place to go. And then if you want to talk about your business, you can go to my website, which is melissafranks.com, and you can schedule a free call with me and we can figure out what's going on.
I love that. I think that what you do is going to be so needed, especially like there was just such a huge boom in like the online business world through the pandemic, and then so many people crashed and burned. And I just like, it all seems like it's bubbling around. And I think that what you do is going to be super, super important for people. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and being so open with us and answering all of my amazing questions. So please follow. I'm going to put all of those links that you just talked about in the show notes. So everybody who's listening, please follow along and make sure that you share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it, especially if they needed to hear some of the hard truths, because that's what good friends do. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you to everyone who's listening. Please share the podcast with a friend and share it on social media and follow everybody around. And I will see you next week on the next episode.